All right, guys, welcome to The Financial Frontier. This is our second episode. We are interviewing Abe Thiessen, who is a realtor from Ontario, as well as a real estate investor. He's coming out here with an investment opportunity and showing it to some of us. So, yeah, we'll let him talk about that, explain some of his strategies. And, yeah, my name is Daniel Hiebert.
I'm Jake Hiebert. Abe, welcome to Alberta.
Thanks for that. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, for sure. It's been good to have you here, show you around. Good trip to Calgary today, I think.
Yeah, we had a very successful day, I think.
Yeah, kind of eye-opening, eh?
Yeah,
you said it reminds you of Toronto?
Yeah, it does. It has that kind of the Toronto vibe.
Yeah, I said it just reminds me of a big city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the big cities are all similar.
They're all similar, yeah. But people from Calgary would be fairly insulted if you said Calgary is like Toronto.
Yeah.
Now, what makes something a successful trip then? So if you guys are going to Calgary and it's considered a success, what makes it a success?
I'll let you answer.
Well, the
that,
big reason
actually.
for our trip was to learn more about the CMHC program with the multifamily construction loan.
Yeah.
And I think what we learned today really wrapped
very
that
beneficial,
up.
for sure.
And being boots on the ground, seeing some of these projects.
Yeah, that was actually very interesting to go and actually look at some of the projects, what they were doing and what they look like. Half completed, and not started yet.
Yeah, we basically seen every stage from excavator into the ground versus to half finished projects to complete finish. So that was pretty cool.
And then the one was the house was still on the property that they were going to tear down.
Yeah,
right. So that was interesting.
Really,
as well.
every stage.
Yeah, we saw every single stage. So that was interesting. Yeah,
And these were 8-plexes, right?
Most of them.
All of them was 8, except one was that one had 12 units on it. The last one we looked at, the completed one, had 6 and 6. Yeah, 12 units on it. Yeah, but it wasn't quite done yet. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to explain just like who you are maybe and what you do in your terms.
Yeah, where are you from?
I'm from Ontario, Listowel area. So they call that Kitchener area, but it's closer to Listowel. I'm a real estate agent. I've been practicing real estate for about 5 years now, and I have a couple other businesses as well. We flip homes and do some other real estate investments, and I also have a hot tub and sauna business as well.
So when you say, just to that for 1 second, hot tub and sauna business, are you manufacturing them or are you just selling them?
I overlook the manufacturing on the sauna part, and we are basically a dealer for the hot tub part of it. So
are you legally allowed to name the brand or are you restricted on that? Which brand of hot tubs do you sell?
It's Northern Leisure.
Northern Leisure?
So Northern Hot Tub is the brand of hot tub, but our stores are Northern Leisure.
Northern Leisure, okay. And you own a franchise in that, or are you just a dealer?
So we used to be Moonlight Sauna, and we actually got bought out by Northern Leisure for our sauna portion of it.
Yeah.
And now basically I'm running the sauna aspect of it, but then we also have our own store, so we retail saunas and hot tubs as well.
Okay.
So it's kind of a 2-stage business.
Yeah. Were you doing that before you got into real estate as an agent, or were you?
I did, and that's the reason I still do it. I personally enjoy saunas and hot tubs a lot, so I've wanted to give it up for, I don't know, I can't count how many times, but I just really enjoy it, so I keep coming back to it. Yeah. It's basically just a hobby. It's turned out to be something much bigger than a hobby.
Is there any chance you ever put red light in your saunas?
No, that would be like an infrared. So our saunas are traditional heat, like a wet steam sauna.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've never done anything with infrared, but it's a complete different type of sauna.
Gotcha, because I know some guy I was listening to online, he builds saunas as well, but he did like that like light therapy, like that red light therapy.
Red light therapy, yeah.
So while you're in there, you're getting this light therapy that's apparently super healthy for you, so it's like a 2-in-1, but I'm sure that increases the cost like crazy, so.
They should put that in a hot tub because I truly enjoy the hot tub.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the infrared saunas are made in China, so the cost is not that
interesting.
High. Most people retail them for quite high, but yeah, when you talk to a salesperson that deals with the saunas, the infrared, they tell you it's the best sauna in the world, and we kind of go against that.
So, I see, right? Yeah. You go the opposite direction, yeah. But yeah, we talked about real estate, and now we're talking about saunas. So
yeah, well, I was going to say, you're coming out here with an investment opportunity. Is that for anyone listening, or is that more private?
The AMT investment?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, it could be for anybody listening for sure. I've never really spent a lot of time on pitching that idea. So far, people kind of have reached out to me mostly, but certainly it'd be up.
Well, maybe what we'll do with that end of it, and we can talk about this a little bit, is mine and your contact information is on our podcast. If people are listening, they can reach out to us, and then we'll pass the number on to you so that you don't get bombarded with calls that are unwanted, right? If people are interested in knowing that. We'll do it that way. Yep.
That way we can kind of filter through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we'll do, well, not necessarily filter, but like just say to you, hey, do you want this person's number? We can kind of talk to the person, say, do you want their number or not?
Yeah. Here's how much they're willing to invest. And,
so on. But yeah, so I think we'll do that. What got you started as a real estate agent? How did you get?
That's an interesting question. I always, looking back now, I've always had a love for real estate. Back in when I was a kid, I was always looking through the flyers and looking at real estate. Like all my life, I've done that.
Yeah.
I never knew that I wanted to be an agent. I really didn't know what it was until my late teens. I didn't even know what a realtor was, right? So I was interested in buying a property, or actually I wanted my parents to buy a property. That's really how it got started. I wanted my parents to buy a property. They were renting for years and years, and I was, I think, 17, 18 years old. And so I was searching on I think it was Realtor.ca, on properties, and started reaching out to realtors and trying to get my parents to go to a property. And finally I got them convinced to look at one, and they figured it was too small, so we ended up not doing anything with it. And then my dad said, why don't you try to get a house? So I went to the bank and got pre-approved and everything, and it was a private deal. Didn't go through real estate on that one. I found it on Kijiji, and anyway, put an offer in, and it all worked out. I was able to buy the house, and then my parents bought the house next door. So I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah. You know, how much time after that was that when you?
Only about 3 months or so.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't not enough for me to back out or make some changes or whatever. Right? Yeah. It ended up. It was a very good experience. We lived there for a couple of years. Our first two kids were born there. So anyway, when my parents bought the house next door, that was on real estate. So the realtor that we used, he basically kind of talked me into it. He's seen my, I think, crazy obsession with real estate and all my questions. And he said, you should be a realtor. And that's really where it started.
I see. Okay. And you just said, okay, that's what I'll do then?
Not really. It took another 3 or almost 4 years after that. It took a long time till I actually...
What was the delay there?
What's that?
What was the delay?
I think just lack of knowledge, and I didn't think that I was able to do it. And I didn't have a high school. I was born in Mexico. I had basically no school. I went to grade 7 and grade 8 in public school. That's really all I had for school. So I figured to do real estate, you need all kinds of crazy schools. So I actually I got enrolled into high school program and worked very hard on that. And anyway, I learned that I didn't need a GED or a high school for that.
For real estate, yeah.
So
after you finished, you learned that?
Well, I didn't finish that. I was probably 30% in it, so still far from finish. And then I learned that I didn't need that. So I booked a test in Toronto, went there, and it's called an equivalency test. Basically, it's a 1.5 hour exam. And I think I had an 80-something score on it. So passed that, and then after that, I booked my exams. And from when I started the exams till when I finished was another 2 years after that. And in between, there was many days where I was like, screw it, I'm not going to be a realtor ever again.
Yeah.
Like, right. So
yeah, I did the same, actually. My high school, my GED equivalency, it took me, I think, 4 years. It took me 4 years to complete it. Yeah. Got married in that time, started a business, had 2 kids, and then finally completed it. Yeah. So I think that nobody should complete that in less than 4 years. I think we set the standard on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes not having a plan, I've never really had like a solid plan. This is what I want to do. I think sometimes is the best thing, just to, I believe God has a different plan than we often think we do. So when we plan stuff, life,
goes differently anyway.
Totally different. So.
Yeah, and that plan ended up with hot tubs, saunas, and real estate. So kind of got you into a lot of different stuff at the end. So what did your first couple of years in real estate look like then? Did you grow pretty quickly as a realtor, or what was kind of your strategy there?
I didn't really have a strategy. I got licensed on a Wednesday, and then Monday, the first shutdown happened. So,
really?
The timing couldn't have been much better.
Right.
Wow. So everybody freaked out the first couple of months there, and I was out there door knocking and promoting, sending out letters. So that really got me a head start. But then as soon as everybody realized what was happening with the real estate market, like people were buying and selling and upgrading, and a lot of people were selling, moving to out of country or out of province. So after that, I had a really good start. And then after that, it was just word of mouth and referrals, and it just went from there.
So in the very beginning, you just basically went out and knocked on people's doors, sent out flyers, really nothing strategically dramatic about that. Just go out and talk to people.
The other big reason, or the other big part of my real estate success was the amount of people that I knew. I had, I think, close to 20 jobs prior to starting real estate. So I knew a lot of people. And I think to this day, I think close to half of my sales are from ex-coworkers, people that I used to work with. So,
maybe there's something to be said about having 20 jobs, right?
Yeah, I thought I was a loser, and I would never make it because I had so many jobs, but that turned out to be a very good thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So with your investment group that you do now with your flipping, do you want to talk about your strategy a little bit? What you're doing with that, or how you came across it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was, again, nothing really planned. I've always liked flipping homes as well, so I tried to do that during COVID, but it was just so hard to get into. We did build a couple multifamily units and a couple single-family homes, and we did flip a few homes and a couple lots. But during COVID, it was just so hard to get good deals.
Yeah.
You end up way overpaying, and it was just hard to make. Not hard. It was easy to make money, but it was harder to come across money. And I was so busy I didn't have the time. So it was really till about just over a year ago when we stumbled across some online ads about other people like flipping courses or whatever. So one of my friends actually ended up going through the course, and he kind of made it ignite for all of me, for me. We had the idea of doing this for a long time, but I just didn't know how to execute the plan and how to get deals. So he ended up going through a wholesale course.
Okay,
teaching people how to buy off-market deals, distressed sellers and things like that. So we took that strategy, and then we kind of changed that a little bit, and then we applied that for a while. A lot of it was signs. Some of those signs that, I don't know if you've ever seen them in the yard, there's "We Buy Houses" signs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we did a lot of that, and that generated a lot of calls. And after that, we just kind of kept going. And we ran into a hard stop where we ran out of money. There was just way too many good deals. So that's when I had the idea. I talked to a few people about it, and everybody wanted to do it, but didn't have the time or the knowledge, but they liked the idea of flipping. So,
and had a little bit of money saved.
Yeah, so I went to quite a few people. First, it was just a couple of friends that we borrowed some money from just to finish a few projects, and then I promised quite high interest, and people liked it. But I knew there was a better way to do it. Just taking friends' money is not scalable.
Yeah, it's not scalable at all because you run out of friends, and friends run out of money, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we ended up talking to a lawyer and trying to figure out how we can get basically pool money together from investors, from people. And so that's what we did. We formed a corporation, and now we have investors in that company. So instead of having shares basically have shares, but instead of, it's a little bit different than the stock market. Like whether the company does good or not, the investors are guaranteed a return. So it's more of a laid back. You put your money in, and you just watch that.
Yeah, rather than buying shares of the project, you're buying shares in the company, and the company issues you a guaranteed rate of return.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, though, the share price doesn't fluctuate, right?
That's
so
right.
The only return would be that dividend yield, kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, your whole strategy is look for the distressed seller who needs a quick sale, needs the house sold, and then you just offer a cash offer to buy this property, usually, or some type of financing, and then hopefully wholesaling it for a little bit more because they're in a distressed spot.
So we've done some wholesaling areas that we don't want to get into. We wholesale those. Basically, our slogan is flip the best, wholesale the rest. So we try to do the best ones for ourselves, and then the other ones we will wholesale to other, sometimes Toronto buyers, other investors as well that want to do similar stuff. And we don't have a crazy fee to upcharge, so it's still a really, really good deal for the buyer. But it's more just usually the properties that are out of our area or are out of our scope of work. So
yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you want those wholesalers or those buyers from you to still be there in the future, right? So if you're selling off a property that you either can't or don't want to do, you don't want to make the fee too high because they'll never talk to you again.
That's right. Yeah. We want to do long-term.
You want to build relationships. Yeah. Yeah.
And how much construction usually goes into these projects?
Well, so far most of them we've done under 90 days. We try to do under 90 days from closing to closing. That doesn't always happen, but we for sure try to do the work to finish the project from when we get possession till it's ready to stage in at least no longer than 90 days.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Do you know what your average renovation cost would be for one of these projects to get like from start to finish? How much you're putting into it?
So not every project needs a lot of work. Sometimes it just needs a bit of paint and a bit of cleaning. So we've done it for as little as 20 and as high as 150. So it kind of ranges. It all depends on
what you're buying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we try to make sure that we buy them at a 25 to 35% below market value. So often, like, we could literally turn around and sell them the next day as they are for like 100,000 extra. So we try to buy really, really discounted properties.
Yeah.
And then another strategy is, and these would be some of them are off market, but these are typically properties that are listed. We've got a very unique way of finding out if they're double lots, and if they are, we have a very unique way of basically doing a severance without the whole long county application approval that often in our area takes 6 months to do. So we've got a strategy on how to do it very quick. So that's been another strategy. We find these properties. They're often not deeply discounted properties. Well, they are, but it's often people that don't know the value of the lot.
So you'll go in and you'll buy the house, and the owner doesn't know that it's a secondary lot that's actually attached to it, and you can subdivide that easily, sell the property back out into the market, and keep the land.
That's right.
Basically, you get the lot for almost free. Yeah.
And most of these are listed with other agents. So I guess it's the lack of age or lack of knowledge of other agents. They don't know that there is another lot. Or
well, they probably don't know how to look for it.
Yeah. Right? And in Ontario, I don't know if you have that here, but in Ontario, if you have two lots side by side under the same title, the same name, they automatically merge. Yeah. So that's how a lot of these lots, they were original lots way back in the day. They got merged, and people just don't know that they're that you can still sell.
Yeah, no, we don't have that here. That stays two lots. So even here, often like the old developments had 25-foot lots, and then they did away with those. But you will still today see on titles, you'll see lot 1 through 5, and they'll have like 125-foot lot frontage, but it's lot 1 through 5 of block plan number, right? So that you don't see that here. It doesn't happen automatically.
And that's how I identify these properties with a legal description. I can usually see it's lot 1 and lot 2. Yeah. And you have to figure out if the house is, sometimes it's on both properties. Well, that obviously is not going to work. So we have to make sure that the house is on one parcel and the lot is on the other parcel. And then also there's a lot of times where they've merged, but there's the county or the townships put bylaws in from keeping people from separating him, so that we have to do a bunch of due diligence on our end.
You actually got to get a hold of the county and find out if they got the bylaws in place.
Yeah, so we find a lot of deals that look like they're good deals, but it's actually a very, very small amount of deals that work for this. I think it's 1 out of 10,000 right now. Like we have to
one out of every 10,000 listings, or 1 out of every 10,000 lots you find?
Listings.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have a team doing all that for you, right?
Yeah, I have a team of people that are a couple assistants that help me with a lot of that, and we've also got very good lawyers that are almost working full time for us on this.
Yeah. So they're hiring teams to work for you as well.
Oh, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I go into the lawyer's office, like they don't even ID me anymore. Like I come there almost on a regular weekly basis now.
It's like, no, we've got his picture on the wall, a wanted poster, right?
Yeah.
So what's your plan for the company? I know today you're looking at some development and whatnot in Calgary. Is that kind of the transition you want to make, or what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at early stages. We don't have the issue of not having enough money at this point, but eventually, once we do enough flips and once we have all these lots and start selling off some, we're going to need to invest that money back into other things again. And I just don't think our Ontario market is a good market to invest for long-term multifamily. So
you'll have to figure out
the reason
another
we're
way
here in Alberta, to try to look for opportunities, something that's a little more landlord friendly and
Yeah. So part of your thinking is that you'll take the cash that you make in the business, and that business will buy and hold properties, or build and hold properties, or develop and hold properties, one of the three eventually, right?
Yeah.
And that'll be part of the income source for these investors to then get their continuous rate of return. Yeah, through the cash flow from those properties. That's how you're thinking about it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because right now we're clearing close to 100,000 after our interest has been paid and everything off of our deal. Like, that's kind of the margins that we look for in a deal. And we're pretty much on track to do one a month so far. And we're hoping to keep that up and do one a month. So
okay, so you're hoping at year end you'll profit as a company roughly just over $1 million.
Yeah. And that money needs to go into other projects again too,
so that it can continue to produce cash flow. Yeah. Because the last thing you want at that point, I'm assuming, is to have a cash problem where you can't deploy it, right? So you have to figure out a way to deploy the cash.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Warren Buffett problem.
Yeah.
I was going to say, especially when you have like so many investors that, you know, they need their return as well. So I'm sure you just keep on deploying that cash is probably the hardest part of the business at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and eventually it'd be nice to have some real estate, long-term stuff that cash flows as well. That's more like, this is the stuff that we're doing. It works and it's scalable to a point, but it's a lot of work. It's not really passive. It's active, very active.
There's nothing passive about looking at 10,000 listings in the real.
And right now I think we get about 1,000 to 2,000 listings, new listings each day. So I'm
that's in all of Ontario.
Yeah, all of Ontario. Yeah. So I'm on the computer every night, looking through these properties. So it's a lot of work.
So 1,000 to 1,200 listings per day.
1,000 to 2,000.
Like those numbers, to me, the first time you said them, I was like, that's shocking. I wonder what it would be for Alberta. That's actually something that I'd be very interested in knowing.
Now, a lot of those are, I was going to say condos, but I tried to filter through that and have not condos like.
So those are listings that are not condominiums. So if you had a 300 condominium tower come up, that wouldn't be part of it.
That's not part of it. So it might be closer to 5,000. I don't know. It's a lot of listings.
Yeah.
Especially this spring, we've had a very heavy inventory.
Did you track that at all during your early first year and a half? I'm thinking of during the early stages of COVID versus now.
No, not really. No,
so you don't.
I mean, I did it kind of in our pocket in our area, but not as a Ontario wide.
So just based on that, would you say that it's more now than it was like 2020, 2021? Or
I wouldn't say so. Like, we have more inventory right now because our market is slower than it was during COVID. But I actually think we had a lot more transactions during COVID. So
the market was the time on market was just a lot shorter.
Yeah. And I think once the interest rates drop, and if the market turns around, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, who knows? But I think the stuff that we're doing is going to work better in a better market, because we're still going to find discounted properties. There's always distressed sellers.
You just have to work harder for them.
Yeah, and during COVID, we would have. I mean, it would have been harder to get discounted properties during COVID because everybody would have listed on MLS. But if we would have found discounted properties, it would be very easy to sell those. Right now, we have to sell them at usually a little bit below market value just to quickly try to get in and out. And that's part of the other reason how we can pay our investors 20% a year, because we're doing it so quick, like so frequently, right? So
your average closing to closing is less than 90 days. You said,
so far it's been less than 90 days.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of. Like, nobody's. Like,
no, that's awesome. Yeah. I remember talking with other flippers here that were talking about that, and I just kind of said, yeah, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have closing to closing in 90 days, and they didn't, right? I haven't seen that, so, yeah.
Although it sounds like there's a very different mindset, though. I find most flippers out here, they're showing up there and taking out their tools and trying to make all the repairs themselves and everything, wherefore it sounds like your strategy is a little bit different. Your time is best spent looking for these properties and finding the best ones, and then getting other guys to go in there and contractors to do the work, right? It sounds like that's probably more valuable for you, right?
Yeah, so we have 2 crews right now that we pretty much employ full time. They're independent contractors, but we keep them busy.
So I guess the guys out here that are saying, 90 days turnaround, it's probably not nearly looking like that at all.
Nope. No, those are the guys, at least the ones that I was taught. Now, are there people that can do it still here? Yeah, I think there are. But the people that I was talking to, no, they were doing the work themselves, taking 3 months off work and then going to do the work. Yeah.
No, I don't. I basically don't touch a single thing. My hands are, kind of
You've got calluses only where the pen goes now.
If there was somebody just starting out, would you recommend them to do the work themselves, or you recommend just get contractors to do it?
I think the first one would be very good to do yourself. I have done physical work. I have flipped my own properties. The first few that we did, I spent a lot of time physically working there myself. But I've never been a very good worker, to be honest, a physical worker. So
you work with your brain.
I think that's an advantage right now. So I think people should do it just to have the experience. But after that, if you want to be a successful flipper, like throw the hammer away. Like you don't need that. Like there's so many people there's so much cheap labor, not cheap labor, but like
people willing to go to work.
People that are willing to work for less than what you can make.
So. Yeah, and that are good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how many did you do yourself? Do you remember?
Two that we...
that you did hands-on?
Flips, yeah.
Were you an agent already at this point?
One of them I was, in my early days. Actually, both of them I was an agent, yeah.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. I found that I lost more deals by not being on the phone than I did by gaining to doing the work.
Any money you gained by doing the work yourself was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially a lot more even. So.
Yeah, who knows, yeah.
Is there any, like, let's say there's somebody listening and they're like, man, that's awesome. Like, that's totally up my alley. I want to do that. Is there any warnings that you would give them as to what to avoid?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a lot. It's hard to... People get so excited when they see opportunity. Like, even if I had warnings for them, they would avoid them anyway. So there's certain things that people just have to learn themselves.
Yeah. Right. You just have to make the mistake and go for it, and you'll tell us what they are.
Yeah. People have to learn the hard way, right?
Yeah. And I think it looks like, for me, it's just all, like, it all comes together. And it kind of did, but it was based on my experience already in the past, and then just all the real estate transactions that I've done with clients. I have quite a few clients that flip as well, so I knew the process already. But I can't say if there's anything. I mean, the biggest thing is don't buy properties on MLS unless there's a double lot or any value that most people don't know of. But I think the real strategy is, or the goal should be, to find discounted properties. And if you can find a property with $50,000 to $100,000 discount, I mean, it's hard to screw up that deal. It's really hard to screw up that deal.
Especially when you put they might be thinking to themselves, man, it'd be nice to sell my house, and they just never get around to it. And you happen to get in contact with them, or they see your sign saying, hey, we'll buy your house cash, right? I'm sure you have a massive advantage going that direction rather than, endlessly scrolling through MLS, which every other investor has already looked at.
Yeah, and you got to think about it. Like, if it's on Realtor.ca, I mean,
people
across the world have access to that. Yeah. People from all over Canada might be investing in Ontario or Alberta or whatever. Yeah. So you're competing with millions of people.
Yeah, I actually remember a comment that when I was working in construction in Hamilton, I served my apprenticeship there. My employer at the time and his partner were commercial real estate and rental property investors. And his partner was a real estate appraiser, a commercial real estate appraiser. And one of the comments he made to me one time, I was on the way to work, I drove by this property, and there was a for sale sign up by this old factory type looking building. And I showed up and I said, oh, hey, so-and-so, haven't you seen that sign over there? How come you're not buying that? And he just looked at me and he goes, if commercial property has a for sale sign on it, you don't want to buy that. That was his comment. Right? He says that means it's way too high. If they have to list it, it's way too high. There are too many connections in the world. And this was in 2001, right? Before the internet was really a thing. Yeah. I mean, it was a thing, but not like it is today.
Well, even in Tabor, It's like every real estate agent is a real estate investor first.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like if the agent didn't buy it, then, you probably shouldn't buy it either.
Yeah, exactly. It's like by the time it hits the MLS, it's like, should I be buying that? Unless you want to keep it for long term, right? Yeah.
And people always have the idea, if you buy power of sale deals, people that don't make payments and it goes to the bank, that's where you can get a good deal. But it's actually almost the opposite of a good deal. They legally have to have it on the market for so many days, and they can't accept the first offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not even a good deal at the end at all.
You want the people that own the house contacting you before they contact a realtor or the bank.
And that's what we often get. The people that call us are often a month or a couple of weeks away from the bank taking possession. So
let me ask you this then. From the time that you put your first sign out and you kind of said, okay, let's look for distressed realtors, how long till you got your first call?
the first, I think it was within a couple of weeks. It wasn't very long.
Really?
Yeah.
And that would have been 2024, in the spring of 2024.
This was all, I mean, we started putting up signs during the winter. It was really hard because the ground was frozen, there was snow. So,
yeah.
but we started in the winter.
So that would have been winter of 2023 to 24.
Yeah, like the beginning of 2024.
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
When there was still snow on the ground. That's when we started. But the phone really started ringing in the summer. And then in the fall, like a lot of the calls that we got in the spring and the summer were deals that we started doing in the fall. So I suppose, again, if somebody's listening to it, like you can't put up a sign, wait for a call, and then expect. It doesn't come that easy, right? Like it sounds like there's some time involved there. That's right. And sometimes there's a few sellers even that we're working with now that had called us last spring already. So I think last spring they were about to lose their house, but they made it work, and now it's like, well, they're going to lose their house again. So it is, you have to do it long term. Yeah. But the other thing is there is other wholesalers as well. So it's more about knowing the right people. There's a lot of wholesalers out there. So you don't have to physically do that part yourself. You could just get
in contact with wholesalers.
But it's kind of the same thing. If other wholesalers haven't done the deal, then it's often not.
Look at it very closely.
Now, do you think this will become even more profitable? Because like all the people that locked into 5-year terms in 2021 at low interest rates, maybe now they're all like getting ready for renewal, and all of a sudden their mortgage payment is going to go up, 30%. Do you think that because of that, there might be a lot more opportunity for this?
Potentially, but the other thing we got to look at too, the deals might get better, and that's actually one thing that concerns me a bit. Some of the deals I've seen are just off the chart, just crazy. But I don't know what the market is going to do in half a year or by the end of these. Like if the market continues to decline, then yes, you need that discount up front for sure, but you're also not going to get your full price at the end.
You're also going to have to sell at a discount, yeah.
Like right now, I think our average days on the market is about 60 days. But if that goes up, then it's harder to hold on to that property. I don't see that happening. I think it's going to start going down a bit soon. But
you think that the Ontario real estate market will come down, or you think it'll stabilize?
Not an average, but just the properties, the lower end properties.
Gotcha.
I think are going to start selling a bit quicker again.
Okay, interesting.
Like there's a lot of first time home buyers that I was trying to help 4 years ago that completely gave up on home ownership. They're finally coming back again and getting their pre-approvals in place now that the interest rate has dropped a bit. So which my guess is they're going to continue to drop here. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to have more and more people try to get into the market. So that anything in our area, you're kind of starting at $400, $450 to buy a decent
that's your
house.
starter
That's not
home.
a rundown house.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of your starting point. So, but then we kind of cap out at $550 to $600. After that, it's hard for anybody, for people without generational wealth to buy something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I imagine the margins would drop on a house like that quite substantially as well.
Yeah.
Just the amount of money you can make on it.
Mm-hmm. The higher the price, the less money you actually make on it.
Right. Yeah.
Because the time on market, right? That's another thing.
And that's part of the reason it's worked really well for us. Like we buy like the very, very, basically the cheapest properties in almost the cheapest area in Ontario is where we buy these properties. So they seem to have a good amount of margins to flip. But in the city, like in Kitchener and the Toronto, the bigger cities, like I don't think what we're doing there would work at all. Or it'd be very hard anyway.
Yeah. You'd have to buy them at a much larger discount.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's harder to do.
But again, if there's a property that's worth 1.2 on the market and you can get it for 900, yes, that's a $300,000 discount, but your carrying cost is so much higher.
Yeah.
And the days on the market might be higher on that property, and your renovation cost is higher. So at the end of the day, you're still going to be hard pressed to make $100,000 on that house.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Might as well stick with what works, right?
Yeah.
What would you say? So switch gears here for a second.
Go for it.
When you said that the time lag between somebody saying you should be a realtor and you actually getting licensed, and then it sounds like between that when you finally got licensed and what you started doing in 2024, what would you say that your mindset shift had to be? Can you relate that at all? Like that from when it was first told you should be a realtor to the time that you got licensed, what happened there mentally?
Well, I had, like I said, that first realtor that kind of encouraged me to do it. I followed up with him a couple times, and he was like, yes, go do it. You should do it. Until I got serious, and then I had a hard time getting a hold of him. So and there was no other Mennonite people in our area doing it. So I didn't really have anybody to go to see
among
what
your
should
friend
I be
group,
doing,
yeah.
like how, trying to figure out what the process. Like I had no idea what the process was even, or how long school would take. Like I didn't have any of that. So I think it all depends on who you connect with and what your experience is. And I mean, for me, there was a lot of personal stuff that happened in between. We got married. There was a lot of things that happened in between. So.
But in terms of money, did you think about money differently, or did you always think about money the way you do now?
I mean, when I started with real estate, I made very sure that I would not do it for the money, and my goal was not to do it for the money. It was more to get the experience, and I had a number in mind. I figured if I could reach that, I would make a good living, but I really didn't try to do it for the money. So I think that really helped me as well.
And I imagine you've surpassed that number now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Quite a lot.
Because it seems like you're super business minded right now. I wouldn't say like financially driven, but definitely opportunity driven.
Yeah.
Was it similar? Let's even say at like 17, 18, 19, when you met that realtor, was it a similar mindset?
Yeah, I was never really money driven. So that, I think it was similar. Actually, a few people told me I had ADHD, so I never really took that very serious. But I knew I had a different mindset or a different way of thinking than most people do. And once I realized to kind of use that as a superpower, it just unlocks so much other potential. So,
what does that look like as a superpower?
Well, I get distracted very easily, and I have a hard time focusing on one deal or on one deal or on one project. So I'm always back and forth from one to another. Now, if I had to physically do all the work that I would be doing, it'd be a disaster. But because I have a very good team, if I can get up and relay the messages that I need to for the day and go and check on the projects and do the things, and if I can relate what my vision is to my team, and the team actually does, they handle 95% of the stuff, the activity that's happening, I just realized that by doing that, I'm far better off than me trying to be involved in every deal. So I actually learned that just giving the team the responsibilities and giving them the project and having them try to complete it is just a much better result.
Yeah,
so,
don't micromanage something you're not capable of micromanaging.
Yeah. So that's where, for me, my the issue with that a lot of people have with ADHD, they have a hard time focusing. But it's actually, for me, it's been very good that I don't focus too much. I'm onto one project for a bit, onto the next one, and it's worked very well for me.
Yeah, well, it definitely looks like it. It's a tough choice between, growing multiple businesses and being successful, or just taking some government money,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Not a tempting choice.
Yeah. So when you started this strategy where you did the double lot and the flipping, and you started taking your friend's money, did you, at that point, did you have a vision of what you wanted it to do, or were you just kind of seeing if this thing would work?
Yeah, basically I kind of had a vision, but it wasn't like a very detailed, planned out vision.
Yeah.
I just knew the double lot strategy was a scalable business because nobody's going to educate all the sellers in Ontario that, hey, you got to talk to your lawyer, your realtor to find out if your legal description has 2 lots, and like it doesn't
exist, and it also doesn't exist.
So that opportunity is going to be there for the next, who knows, 50 to 100 years probably, right? And unless the townships, do something and put a bylaw on all of them, like.
But at this point, they would have to know that exists in order to put a bylaw in place,
right?
Right.
And there's no reason for anybody to do that because it's actually in the best interest of everybody to separate that lot and build another house on it. And
the county for taxation for sure, right? Yeah. So you didn't really think it through and think, okay, this is scalable. I'm going to need a team. I'm going to go hire people. You just kind of went, hey, this works. Let's do one. And then you found another one. You did it again. And that was basically it.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we did one, I was like, we're on to something here. We need to scale that. I did have those thoughts, but it wasn't like, we had a number or a target, and this is what we have to do, and this is a team that we have to grow. Like it just kind of one after step by step is how it kind of came together.
Yeah. At what point did you hire somebody? What was the first time you said, I got to hire somebody?
For the flipping side
For the flipping side of it, yeah. Or was that like a decision that you made at the beginning and said, I'm going to have to hire people to help me with it?
Yeah, like we on the very first deal, we had contractors do
I see. Okay.
99% of the work. One of the partners that I actually had on the first deal, he went out there, all excited and started ripping out the floor. And I said, dude, you don't need to. Like, we're going to get somebody in here. I said, you need to find out how to find more of these properties. So
yeah.
he's a partner on a few deals, and he's actually the guy that would basically run the wholesale business side of it. So I'm not so much involved in acquiring deals and finding these deals. That'd be more him, but...
And you were trying to pull his pouch off and get him back out of the house and go find another deal.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you knew right away that this wasn't a one or two man show. This was a team effort. Yeah.
I knew it wasn't scalable just with doing it all yourself. So
yeah.
Well, I find it crazy how many like mildly successful businesses are just terrified of delegating anything.
Yeah.
Like they can make, $100 an hour doing one thing, but they spend their time doing the $30 an hour thing just to save the $30 an hour. But they don't realize they're losing that $70 an hour of time, right?
Would you say that you noticed that about yourself, or was that something that somebody told you? Did you discover that, or was that said to you?
I think I discovered most of it myself. Now, again, I read a lot of books, and I think a lot of it I learned in reading books. One of the books that I started reading, mostly finished last year, was Buy Back Your Time by Dan Riddell.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me. He's very much about delegating your work. So reading that book and doing this whole flipping strategy was kind of all at the same time. So that
actually fit. Yeah.
It just basically confirmed that what I was.
Yeah. Would you say that reading had a lot to do with your mindset change?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think about a lot is what you consume defines what you think, right? I think mostly. So if you had to give somebody a list of top 3 books or 4, or however, what would you list? 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know, 10. What would you list?
I think one of the first ones would be Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, yeah.
That just kind of opens up your eyes to the rest of the world, and you start to look at debt, real estate debt, good debt, a lot different way.
Yep.
And
then that's also where the cash flow quadrant comes in.
Yeah.
That's his original. Yeah.
So that's one of them. The other one, I think, probably the number one would be the magic of thinking big. So that's one thing you need in real estate. Like, you got to be able to think big.
Yeah.
Okay.
If not, you're going to get destroyed.
What do you think destroys most? Okay, so that was 2 books. Is there another one, or just those 2?
There's another one, How to Think and Grow Rich, and there's a few other ones as well. There's about 5 or 10 that I would recommend.
Yeah. Okay. So if there was one thing that you could say that would destroy somebody quickly in the real estate, whether you're an agent or a flipper or whatever it is you're trying to do within the real estate investment world, what would you say is the number one killer? If you could point out one thing.
I think it's your mindset, not like in real estate, we have cycles and we have a lot of bad days, usually more bad days than good days, where, especially in flipping, where you go into a project and you find out the wiring's bad, you got to redo the whole wiring on the house. So that's where often people just get discouraged and think it's not going to work out. And then, they end up hiring bad or overpay expensive contractors and going way over budget. So I think just the ability to think your way out of the project in terms of handling the stress and just having that vision of the next one, like, again, thinking big on the next project. And even if you have to lose, and then the other thing, I think a lot of people, they're not willing to lose on a flip, and you have to be willing to lose some. You have to lose some to gain some big ones. So
yeah, well, and I've said this before. I think that if you have some money saved, you need to be willing to risk it. Otherwise, it means too much to you. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other, we could do a whole episode on that, I think, because it's such a mindset thing. But the money that you earned on an hourly rate, and the money that you saved while working on an hourly rate on a job for somebody, you should be willing to invest it and risk it on something. Otherwise, it means too much to you, and you'll probably never make any money with it.
And again, I think the book Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of lays out those differences.
That's correct. Yeah,
being an employee, there's nothing wrong with employees. We need employees.
Yeah, it's a noble pursuit. Yeah,
but the way the economy with our inflation, like you're never going to outrun the money printing that our country is
well,
doing.
we talked about this before, even where it's like if you're the guy who does work the hourly rate, but you just hold on to every penny you have, like you don't do any investing, you are the biblical definition of greed, right? Because you're not even willing to put that money to use at all. All you're trying to do is cling to it as tightly as possible, right?
Yeah, people with small amounts of money are not always, but very often more greedy than people with lots of money, right?
I would say that's true.
Yeah. In your experience, has that been true? Would you say
very true.
The people that you've met? Yeah. That's actually a very interesting thing to think about, especially when it comes to real estate. Like if you want to flip a house, you need to put a lot of money at risk, right? For a lot of people, if they're doing their first one, they're putting their entire life savings at risk, right? And so that's a very hard thing to overcome for a lot of people.
Yeah, it sure is.
Right.
And I mean, the way we did our first couple flips is we moved each time, and so we lived in that.
So you moved your wife and kids along with your flip? So not only did you risk your entire net worth, but you risked also your wife and kids now living in a renovation project again.
Exactly.
You risked your marriage as well, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the quality of the project.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first deals that we did, or flips that we did, was very beginning of COVID there, and we sold our house, and we bought a house that we had to live in there. So while we lived in there, we did the work, and we thought the rug upstairs would be okay. So we shampooed it out like 3 or 4 times because we were going to, settle in first and then slowly do the renovation. And the first night of sleeping there, I think I had 2 hours of sleep. Like I just couldn't sleep because of the bad dog smell in there. So just, you have to be willing to sacrifice either your family or your time or your money. Like you have to kind of choose one or the other.
Or put all three on the table.
Or sometimes all three. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically if somebody could smell that smell for a whole night, they would know that it doesn't come so easy, eh?
That's right. And I always, when we look through houses, I always tell our team right away, I was like, oh, I smell money in here.
Yeah.
If you smell odor and it's bad, that's a good sign that there's potential there. So.
Yeah. Because of the value of the house was sold based on the smell.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
So instead of for your filters, instead of going like non-smoker, you go smoker house.
Pats, you got to select all of that.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing about real estate too is money. There is so many investors out there and so many people with money all around the world. And real estate has been, for the last hundreds of years, been one of the safest ways to invest. So investors know that. So it's not about really how much money you have. It's about, are you willing to do the work to try to turn that money into more money and pitch your idea to investors or partner up with people. Like you don't even have to sell your house to do one. Like get 10 people together and
you have to convince others to sell their house, eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with that. Like one of the things that I hear very often is people are very afraid of partnerships. And I always people come to me and ask me for advice on, okay, would you do a partnership again? And I always say, well, I have a number of them at the moment. And you have to define, and we could probably, again, do a whole episode on just this, bring an expert in on this. Define your roles, define your responsibilities, define your money in, define your money out. As long as those definitions are in place, partnerships work fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then don't cross your roles and responsibilities, right?
And our whole life is really partnerships. Like we're partnerships with our government. Like everything is partnership. Like
you get married, you're into a long-term partnership. You're a forever partnership. You have kids, you're into a forever partnership. Right, you go to a church, you're a long-term partnership, or you should view it as such anyway. Mm-hmm. I think you're right about that.
And even would you consider it good advice maybe for even your first couple, like 1 or 2? Don't even expect to try to turn a bunch of money, like you were saying. You like your first couple, you didn't want a massive sum of money, but more so the experience and the knowledge of how to flip a house, right? Would it be fair to say that a lot of people go into it with that mindset maybe, and they come out breaking even and they think it's a complete loss?
Yeah, I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. And my recommendation, if anybody's interested in doing this, I would go in your local town or your local city or town, whatever, and find out who's doing the flipping and learn. You can watch YouTube videos all day long on flips. There's so much stuff that you can learn all you can, and then offer your service to manage that project for another flipper for free, just to learn, like just to get that experience.
Yeah.
And like, that's one thing, nobody's come to me and with offering that. So I would absolutely,
you would take somebody on that,
and I would pay people, but
yeah. You know. But if somebody came and said, "Hey, let me manage a flip," you would say, "Here it is."
Yeah, with low expectations, just to learn, I would 100% help them all through the way. And I think that's the best way to learn is kind of the only real way to learn is by experience. You can read all the books you want, but it's hard to flip a house by reading a book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I think they've done studies before too. And people that go like a couple years of their life, especially in their early 20s, with making very little money, end up making the most money later on. Especially because a lot of those people are like in internships and whatnot, right? Where they get to work with the people, the high earners, but for a very low cost because their entire wage is just the experience, right? But then they take that experience into the workforce and then they just dominate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think what you touched on there, I think is very very relevant in today's upbringing of young people, and that is that experience trumps education all day long. I remember even my dad, and at the age of 20, I grew up in Canada. He grew up in Mexico. Well, I grew up mostly in Canada. I knew way more than he did about Canada, and he kind of made the comment. On more than one occasion, he would say, "Yeah, you have all this knowledge, but I have experience. Which one do you think has more value?" And he said it differently, but that's basically what he was saying. And he said it, I remember him saying it on 5 different occasions. And by the time I turned 40, somewhere along the way, it kind of stuck. And I went, okay, experience trumps knowledge every single time. Now you get, and I think it has to do with the amount of knowledge that you gain by experience, right? So you can read a book in theory on flipping real estate all day long, but that book isn't really going to show you how to identify a wiring problem. You need an electrician, you need a relationship with an electrician to come in, and you need to pay them. You need to experience that, and you need to lose some money in order to experience that, right? And so if somebody came along and said, "I'll manage this for free, or you pay me $10 an hour or 4% of the deal or whatever," you'd be like, "Yep, this will get you some good experience. Here you go." Right? Because that guy's going to learn that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think that too many people are willing to offer their services for free.
No, it doesn't. Nobody wants to. Yeah, take that.
They don't see.
That's again your mindset problem.
That's correct.
Like,
yeah, and I was going to say that is. I think that's a mindset problem, but it's also we don't see experience as value problem, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I was thinking that through as you were talking about that.
And again, with that employee mindset, that poverty mindset that you got to work X amount of hours to get X amount of money. You have to, like, that doesn't really work in the flipping side, because you could spend way too much on one project and nobody's going to pay you.
Yeah.
It's more about providing value than it is your effort and time and work into the deal.
Yeah, totally. And you were even saying how one thing that holds a lot of people back is their imagination just isn't big enough. So would you say for some people, maybe they would want the knowledge of how to do it, but they can't even imagine themselves doing it at the scale that you're doing it. So the knowledge is worthless, right? Because they can't even imagine themselves executing it. Would you say you kind of see that in a lot of people?
Yeah, 100%. And again, it comes down to what you think you're worth. When I started real estate, I had the number $150,000. I had to earn $150,000 to make a decent living. And a lot of people I know right now are thinking, that's crazy. Like that's twice as much as they make. Mm-hmm. But in reality, to live a decent life in Ontario and go on a couple vacations a year and you know, save up for your kids' education and whatever you got to do to just even have especially in Ontario, just to have a starter home and drive a vehicle and all that, you almost need 150 household income. Now, if your partner or wife works, it's a little bit different, but
if you're a sole income household, that's difficult to do.
Yeah. So the ability to think that to make $500,000 or $1 million or $5 million or whatever the number is, like if you don't think that you're worth that or that you can make that, you will not make that. So that's one of the biggest problems.
It's almost like belief before actions and actions before results. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a guy, I think I have his name correct. He has the T-bar. If you ever get a chance to look it up, he has a book on it called the T-bar: Think, Believe, Action, Result. T-bar, right? And he has a whole series of teachings that he does on it. But belief is Yeah, thinking is first, belief is second.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So you have to think of these things, then you have to actually believe that you can do them. And he says that belief generates action. If you don't believe in it, you're not going to have any actionable results, right? So I think that's kind of interesting.
And again, the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's about two different dads basically, and the poor dad says, "Oh, I can't afford that." The rich dad says, "How can I afford that?"
That's correct. Yeah, always ask the question.
Yeah. And then also about your worth or whatever you want to make. It's not about the money, but the other thing I can say, if you don't think you will be a millionaire, you will definitely not.
Yeah,
the chances are
almost zero.
Almost less than winning the lottery.
Now, this is a question. So you two are some of the most successful people I've met, both of you for sure. So I guess if you guys can both answer this, where did your belief come from originally? So obviously now you have reason to say, look, obviously I can do it because I have done it. But where did it come from originally?
What beliefs?
Which one? Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
The negative or the good?
No, the good. So you're looking at your future and you're like, no, I can actually be a successful realtor or a house flipper, or in your case, contractor or whatever it might be. What was the root of that belief?
You go first.
I mean, for me, I think it comes down to that book, The Magic of Thinking Big. I think that just, for me, I just realized that it's not a money problem. It's not a parent's problem. It's not you're born in Mexico and you don't know whatever the issue is. It's none of those. It's simply, do you believe you can do this? And do you believe you're worth that?
Yeah, and are you willing to learn it?
Yeah.
I would say for me, it was two things. I can combine it to probably three things. The third one I won't talk about because we were never going to have the time for it. But the first one was, I was working for a guy, and he gave me the option of becoming a contractor, which he would teach me, or an employee as a carpenter, which he would teach me as well. And he said, no, you actually have the ability to become a contractor and a businessman if you want yourself. You can do what I do. And I kind of went, really? And he said, yeah. And so he poured just that little bit of belief in me. He started off with that. And then I had a real love for knowledge and books and reading and things like that. And I started reading some of this material, and the books just kind of, the more stories I read about people, the more I realized that everybody is an average person when you actually strip the money and you strip the prestige and you strip the heartache and you strip the pain or whatever it is that we think makes up people. When you strip that all off, everybody's an average person. There's nothing special about anybody, right? When you strip all of that away. And then I kind of went, okay, if that person is able to do that just by learning, then I can learn it too, right? So that kind of started the mindset change and the shift.
Yeah, that's what I find most awesome is that, like, in a sense, you guys, if anybody shouldn't believe in themselves, it should be you two, right? Like, I'm from Mexico, not completing high school, right? Not to be rude, but that's just what the scenario shows, right? But it's the exact opposite with both of you guys. You guys believe in yourself probably more than the average person who finishes high school, grows up in a fairly wealthy home, right? You guys, your amount of belief probably surpasses even them, right?
Yeah, and I think that might have to, actually, I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think that has to do with the fact that you had to prove it to yourself and others? Or is that just because you set out to achieve it?
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, was trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
I think was a big part.
Would you say it's higher that you were going to prove a point to others, or that you were going to prove a point to yourself?
More to myself, some to others, probably 50-50.
Yeah.
Each time I had those, like I said, 20 different jobs. Each time I left, I always got told that, oh, you'll be back, or you're not going to make it, or whatever. And that's really what gave me the feel to go and
Have you contacted any of those people I told you that?
They're his clients now.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's hilarious.
Sure.
Yeah. I would say for me, it was two things. One was myself, and one was my wife and kids. That was like the number one thing. I said, I'm going to prove it because they deserve better. They deserve better. They deserve this. And so I just kept going. It didn't matter what the cost. You just kept going. Yeah. That for me was a really big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. I think there was a lot of different variants, but basically. And then the other part of it is that achievement. Like it's not about money, but just being able to do something that everybody thinks is impossible, and including your parents. Like it's very, very fun to get that achievement.
Yeah. I guess your parents are still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do they, maybe they'll listen to this, but what's your interaction with them like now that you've been doing this for about 5 years? Has it changed at all? Or has it Can you talk about that, or is that
It's-
is that off limits?
No, it's completely open about that. It's very interesting. So my about maybe 10 years ago, my dad wanted me to just work at a welding shop and get a good wage, and he thought if I did the right things, I would be have a good life and all that. And I just knew it wasn't for me. So there was a long period of time where he didn't really talk to me about that. And
because you figure he was disappointed.
No, I think he was happy that I was doing the things that I was doing. Yeah. I think he just wasn't willing to acknowledge that his job, secured. He'd worked at his place for over 20 years.
Yeah,
he got a good wage. I think he realized that was a dead end road, and he didn't want to admit that. And funny enough, I kept talking to him like, you need to start flipping houses, you need to start investing, you need to start doing this. And it was beginning of this year. He was forced to work night shift, or that was basically the
lose
only
his
option.
job. Yeah.
So he didn't really know what to do. He was very disappointed in his employer and everything. And I said, this is just what happens as an employee. Like, no matter how loyal you think they are, like you are, at the end of the day, you're just another number. There's the odd occasion where it's a small company where you're more than a number, but in most big companies, you're just another number, right? So now he actually, I pretty much employ both of my parents full time.
Oh, wow.
So they do most of our landscaping, and they actually do our staging. So there's a lot of work
awesome.
It's kept them very busy. Basically, beginning of the year is when we started that. So
that's awesome.
Really, that's an achievement in itself.
Yeah, no kidding. But the other thing I think too is that, like you said about your dad, for somebody who wants that as a career and then says, you know what, I'm not going to work for this employer anymore. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go work over here because I can still work the day shift and maybe get a little bit of a raise. That's not it's still a noble thing to do if you want to be an employee and you want to retire that way and have your house paid for. Like, I think that's still an achievement that people should set out to achieve, right? If you want to be an employee. But you're very limited, and your loyalty. And I just heard a story very recently, and I'll tell it very quickly. As a guy, he was always promised by his employer. He started with the employer when the guy started out like with nothing. And this guy was by his employer's side through the thick and thin, and was always promised, just word of mouth, if I sell the business one day, you will get some money out of it. If I sell the business one day, you will get this much share of the business is yours. Well, I think it's 32 or 33 years later now. The guy, the original founder of the business, sold it to one of his children, and this employee is still there, and he's making his good wage, so he's paid well through the years. And he goes and talks to the child who bought the business, and the child goes, I know absolutely nothing about that. I have zero obligation to you. You may as well leave. And he basically was fired, and he went back and talked to who was his friend as well, because they kind of grew up together in this business. And the guy said, well, you got to talk to the owner now. There's nothing I can do. Right. And he got nothing for it, not even a pension. Like, now he's 60 years old, 62 actually, and he's got nothing, like zero, because all of his hope was rested in that. So it doesn't matter what it is, there's always that potential, right? If you build a business, that's very different, right? That's how I look at it, is which one. So, and I always tell people this, if your employer is promising you something, tell them to promise it in writing, right? Just put it in writing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you like your job and you get paid well, and you have hopes that something's going to come out of it, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't expect only that.
That's correct. Yeah. And so if this person and I always make this comment, and we talk about this quite a bit, take 10% of your income and give it to me. Let me put it into mutual funds for you, and you'll be fine. Like, if this guy would have done that for those 30 years, taking 10%, he'd have $3-4 million, and he would still be fine, right? Because his income was high, but he had just spent all of it, and he didn't know about all of that, right? And so as an employee, that is always a chance. It doesn't matter how loyal they are, right? So, but as a business owner, you have the opportunity to do that for others, right? And there's another story here, and I know these people personally. He worked for a farmer for 30 years, was told, you work for me for 10 years, you can have that house that you're living in. And so he put an addition on it with his own money. We thought it was his house. And all of a sudden the farmer says, well, my son's getting married, you got to get out of the house. And the guy goes, I've lived here and I think it was 24 years or something like that. You said it was my house. And he's like, yeah, no, Thanks for the addition. Never even paid him for the addition.
Wow.
It was gone, right? So that you have to be ready for that, or put it on paper, I think, right? So experience is worth almost nothing in those cases because it's way too late, right? So, but yeah, so yeah, I think about business versus employeeship, if you want to call it that, in those terms. Like, is it on paper, right? But yeah, so.
And my other advice to employees would be, no matter how secure you think your job is, with the power of AI and machinery and stuff like
robotics.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be a big crash where people lose their jobs and the whole economy is going to go bad. No, it's just going to be machines basically replacing your job. So,
well, just this last week at Microsoft, there was just one update to an AI that made it code better, right? It was Gemini, the Gemini bot. And just like that, because that one update, 7,000 engineers were fired at once. So it's just one update, 7,000 jobs lost. So yeah. Definitely build up something for yourself that you can rely on.
And that's where passive income has to become important, right?
100% through investment opportunities or mutual funds, or do your own real estate projects. But
I was going to say passive income and just the ability to make money by yourself without the need of a company behind you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And the other thing I always say is, if you want to be an employee for somebody, for a business, for a company, that's great. But figure out a way to have a second and third source of income. Like, everybody should have 2 or 3, especially with the coming AI revolution, right?
Yeah, I think just having one income and that's the only thing that you rely on to make a living is extremely dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and I think that too. So when we talk about, and I wanted to ask you about this. Yeah, we're just over an hour and 5 minutes now. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what do you think the average person thinks of risk versus what you think of risk? Because I think of an employee who's a permanent employee with one source of income. To me, that's way too risky, right? Like, I want more than one source of income so that if one fails, I have another to lean on, right? That's why I want more than one source. So the average employee is thinking he's not taking any risk because he's working for somebody else. But in reality, that employee is taking more risk than a business owner who has 3 businesses, right?
Oh, way more. Like, if we go into a terrible recession with our properties, we buy them in such a way that we have room to discount our price. And I think there would be a lot, if you're just an employee, there's a lot higher risk of you losing your job than there is of me losing that home. So,
Well, and on top of that, the employee will lose his job. There's a much higher risk that an employee can lose his job, but the risk of you losing your ability to sell somebody else's home is dependent on you keeping your license.
Yeah.
Right. Or wrecking your relationship with everybody doing things that are illegal and horrible. But as long as you're a good, honest, God-fearing person who does deals that way, people are always going to want to deal with you whether you're in a recession or not. Right.
Exactly.
That's how I think about it. And any business that is a good business is that way. Right. Mm-hmm. So the risk of being an employee is higher than the risk of being a business owner in that scenario. Right. Yeah.
Well, and the coolest part is, hypothetically, if everything you had was wiped away tomorrow, you would start the next day with all the knowledge of how to make probably $500,000 a year, and you could just go and start it up again, right? So the knowledge, in a sense, is also risk haven because you know you can always make that money back now with those skills. Where for somebody who has a job their whole life and that's the only thing that they know, well, there won't always be the guarantee if that money source is gone. Your actual knowledge at that point isn't worth much.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah. Especially if that knowledge is replaced by AI.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, it might be enough to get you into another job temporarily, but it won't actually be able to, get a full-fledged income after that, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people, if you lose everything, they can't take away your mind. I mean,
They can't take your ability to learn a new business.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I look at it. And the biggest, again, I wanted to ask you about this is, what would you say is one of the biggest skill sets that has made you the most amount, like your biggest ROI on skill set? What would you say that is?
I think just delegating work and dealing with people, having a good team, I think is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Forget what activity you're doing. Like any business, you must know how to deal with people. So,
and how to delegate.
Yeah, and I heard a saying one time too about everybody thinks they want to do certain parts of the business. They don't want to be the salesperson, but you got to be able to sell yourself no matter what it is. If you're a realtor, if you're even as an employee, you're technically selling your time.
You have to make yourself sellable.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's probably the number one skill is learn sales.
How do you choose which people to delegate tasks to?
You find out very quickly. You learn. It takes, and I believe that everybody should be willing to give everybody a try that seem like they're reasonable, and you'll find out very quick if they're the right people or not.
That's it, eh? Yeah. Just like you practice.
Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of go with your gut feeling. Like,
yeah. You watch them for a bit. No, that doesn't work. Okay, let's put you in something else.
And is the delegation usually like an hourly pay or salary, or is that actually like commission based pay?
We have both. We have commission people. We have hourly. We have salary. We've got a bit of everything. So it really depends. But
okay, does it almost depend on what the person prefers?
No, I think
or
it depends on the job and their
Okay.
ability to manage stress or whatever. Or
Gotcha.
People that are willing to manage a lot, I believe they need to be paid more than just an hourly wage.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah.
I actually have a good friend that has worked at a company for years and years, and he gets paid well, hourly rate. But he's thinking about potentially looking for another job just because he's paid by the hour. He can save the company $1 million a year, and he might get a $2 raise. But like, if he's at home not showing up, there's no money for him. So, and then the employers are not willing to change him to a salary or a percentage, and I think he's gonna walk away from the company after working there for, I think, 25 years.
Wow. I feel like that company is leaving so much money on the table.
Oh, they have no idea what they're going to lose by losing. Yeah.
I know you're very in favor of like paying employees with stock as well.
Absolutely.
Which I think is probably one of the best ideas an employer can do.
Yeah. Or a profit share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either share in the business, profit share, or some sort of you have to incentivize employees beyond their hourly rate or salary.
100%. I think the idea of profit share is a little bit overrated in a lot of areas. I see way too many people work very, very hard all year just to hope to get a big bonus at the end of the year. I think it should almost be the other way around. It's hard to reward before your outcome, but if they work for you for 5 years, you should almost I think there's other ways to pay people than a small profit share at the end of the year.
I would say that the profit, I've seen some work very well and some work like garbage. So if it's executed well, it does very well. But I agree with you. If somebody is working very hard all year and at the end of the year they get a bonus of a couple of $1,000s, that's not worth it. If you're doing profit share, it needs to be meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially if it's a bigger company and they have a lot of employees, everybody else does their part, but there's one guy that does, and he still gets the same amount potentially, right?
Yeah.
Does it have to be immediate as well? So like instead of being at the end of the year, it's like, okay, this month, if I push out this much product, I know I'll have a 30% raise in my paycheck this month. Do you guys think it has to be immediate, or end of the year is fine?
So it depends on the business. Some businesses can do that, others can, because you don't really know your profit until you actually sit down and do the books.
Right.
Like, whereas if you're flipping a home, you could probably do that because you track the numbers so well per project.
We're actually thinking about the contractors that have been with us now for almost a year, or actually a bit over a year now. So we're thinking about doing a percentage on each deal of the net profit. So it won't be anything crazy, but a small percentage of the profit of each deal
is what they get as a bonus.
So if they can save me $10,000, there might be $100 or $1,000 or whatever in their pocket at the end of the day. So
a service-based business is a lot harder, right? So if you're producing the same product over and over and over again throughout the year, it's a lot harder to know how profitable you are because your actual expenses don't really get tallied up. They do get managed, but not tallied. Right. So it's harder to do. So it depends on the business, but I do think that the profit share has to be meaningful. Yeah. So anything else? Yeah. So I talked about books earlier, and you mentioned 2, and then what would be the number one mindset change? Just before we go off here, what's the number one mindset change that you think that the average person needs to have in order to make it in the real estate business world? Whether you're an agent or a flipper or an investor, whatever it is, what would you say the number one thing is?
That is a very, very, very hard question. I don't know if there's one. I think I would point it to the top 3 things. And you said besides books. So that's not one of them. That is pretty much the number one, but we'll leave that one out.
Yeah. So even if they want to glean that information out of books, what would the actual thinking be differently, is how I was thinking about it.
I think you have to, your goal should be to provide value no matter what you do. If it's a realtor serving clients, it's about bringing value. If it's a flipper trying to flip a home, it's about, can you bring enough value that the buyer will pay for that? So I think bringing value is probably the number one.
Yeah.
And then it would, after that, your ability to work with people is a skill that I think you must have. And then the third one is just work on your beliefs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
That would kind of pin it down to the three top things.
Okay. That's awesome. I actually fully agree with you on that. Anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah, no. I was actually just talking to a agent here in town, and he was saying the exact same thing. He said, if I can just go in there and before I even started thinking about the commission, just trying to figure out what I can all do for them to help it go smoother and just be more helpful. He says that's how he's built his entire business, and he's one of the most successful in town. So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to get off your chest, or?
I think that's all.
This is it.
Got to go back to Ontario and try to learn, or I basically absorb all the information that I've learned here in Alberta. So
there you go.
I usually try to be a sponge and just take all the information, and then it takes me 2 weeks to just,
process
go through all that and process all that. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And like we said in the beginning of the podcast there, if people want to reach out to you, we've got our numbers in the description. People will reach out there, and then we'll handle it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to be a realtor, a flipper,
I don't want to be the cause of you getting a bunch of calls that you don't want. Right. So we'll manage it that way.
Yeah, totally. And thank you for taking the time to come on.
Awesome.
I really appreciate it.
For having me.
Yeah, it's been good.